Crash landing. The vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean stretched out beneath Ambassador Zara's ship, an endless blue canvas dotted with the occasional emerald jewel of an island. From her vantage point high in Earth's atmosphere, Zara marveled at the beauty of this world that her people had observed for centuries. As the lead diplomat of the Galactic Confederation, she had seen countless planets, but Earth held a special fascination. Its inhabitants, though technologically primitive by Confederation standards, possessed a remarkable spirit of resilience and creativity. Zara's reverie was abruptly shattered by a series of alarms blaring through the ship's cockpit. Red warning lights flashed across her control panel as the ship began to shudder violently. "Computer, status report," Zara commanded, her four-fingered hands dancing across the holographic interface. "Ambassador, we've sustained critical damage to our primary propulsion system and shield generators," the AI responded in its calm, melodic voice. "Origin of attack unknown. Crash landing imminent." Zara's heart raced as she processed the information. An attack. Here, in the protected space of a pre-contact world. It was unprecedented, a gross violation of Confederation law. But there was no time to ponder the implications. Her ship was plummeting towards the planet's surface at an alarming rate. "Computer, find me the nearest landmass for emergency landing," Zara ordered, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Calculating. Nearest suitable landing zone is an uninhabited island approximately 200 kilometers from our current position. Adjusting course now." The ship lurched as it changed direction, skimming the ocean's surface. Zara could see a small speck of land growing larger on the horizon. She gritted her teeth, using all her piloting skills to keep the damaged craft airborne for just a few more precious moments. With a deafening roar, the ship plowed into the sandy beach of the island, carving a deep furrow as it slid to a stop at the edge of a dense jungle. The impact slammed Zara against her restraints, momentarily knocking the wind out of her. As the dust settled, she took stock of her situation. "Computer, damage assessment," she wheezed. "Hull integrity at 62%. Life support systems functional. Communication array offline. Emergency beacon active but operating at reduced power due to damage." Zara unstrapped herself and stood on shaky legs. She needed to get out of the ship in case of a fuel leak or fire. Grabbing an emergency survival pack, she made her way to the airlock and cycled it open. The humid air of Earth hit her like a wall as she stepped out onto the alien world. Her pale blue skin, evolved for the cooler climate of her homeworld, immediately began to glisten with moisture. She took a deep breath, analyzing the air. It was breathable, though the high oxygen content made her feel slightly lightheaded. Zara's large, multifaceted eyes scanned the beach and the dense vegetation beyond. The island seemed deserted, but she couldn't be sure. Her training kicked in, and she began to catalog her priorities. Find shelter, secure a water source, attempt repairs on the communication array, and most importantly, avoid contact with the indigenous population at all costs. As she pondered her next move, a movement in her peripheral vision caught her attention. She whirled around, her hand instinctively reaching for the small defensive weapon at her hip. A figure emerged from the tree line, and Zara found herself face to face with one of the planet's natives. The human was male, tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and a scraggly beard. He wore tattered clothing that had clearly seen better days, and in his hands, he clutched a crude spear fashioned from a sharpened piece of wood. His eyes, a startling shade of green, were wide with a mixture of fear and wonder as he beheld the alien before him. For a long moment, neither moved. Zara's mind raced. This was exactly the scenario she had been trained to avoid. Direct contact with a pre-spaceflight civilization could have dire consequences, altering the natural course of their development. But in her current predicament, she realized she might not have a choice. The human was the first to break the silence. He spoke, his words unintelligible to Zara, but his tone cautious and questioning. He gestured towards her ship, then back to her. Zara slowly raised her hands, palms out, in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I mean you no harm," she said, knowing he wouldn't understand her words, but hoping her tone would convey her intentions. The human tilted his head, considering. Then, to Zara's surprise, he mimicked her gesture, lowering his spear. He spoke again, this time pointing to himself, and uttering a single word repeatedly. "Jack," he said, thumping his chest. "Jack." Zara realized he was telling her his name. She pointed to herself and replied, "Zara." A smile broke across Jack's face, transforming his features from wary to almost boyishly excited. He gestured for her to follow him, pointing towards the jungle. Zara hesitated. Following this human went against every protocol she had been taught. But as she glanced back at her ruined ship, she knew her options were limited. With a silent apology to her superiors back home, she nodded and fell into step behind Jack. As they trekked through the dense foliage, Zara's mind whirled with questions. How had this human ended up alone on this island? How long had he been here? And most pressingly, how would his presence complicate her mission to remain undetected while she waited for rescue? After about 20 minutes of walking, they emerged into a small clearing. Zara's eyes widened as she took in the sight before her. A crude but ingenious shelter stood in the center, constructed from salvaged pieces of what appeared to be a small boat or plane. Various handmade tools and weapons were scattered about, and a small garden of native plants grew in neat rows to one side. Jack gestured proudly to his camp, then pointed to a small stream that ran along the edge of the clearing. He mined drinking, inviting Zara to refresh herself. As Zara cautiously approached the stream, marveling at the human's survival skills, a distant rumble caught her attention. She looked up, her extra-sensitive hearing picking up a sound that Jack had yet to notice. It was a sound she recognized all too well, spacecraft entering the atmosphere. Panic gripped her as she realized the implications. Those ships weren't Confederation vessels coming to her rescue. No, these had to be the same hostiles that had shot her down, and they were coming to finish the job. Zara turned to Jack, who was now looking at her with concern, having finally heard the approaching ships. In that moment, Zara made a decision that would alter the course of both their lives, and potentially the fate of two civilizations. She grabbed Jack's hand, pointing urgently towards the sky, and then to his shelter. Somehow, the human understood. His eyes hardened with determination, and he nodded, quickly beginning to gather his most important tools and weapons. As the roar of the approaching ships grew louder, Zara helped Jack disguise the entrance to his shelter. They worked in frantic silence, using vegetation and debris to camouflage the structure. Just as they finished, the first ship appeared overhead, its sleek, predatory form a stark contrast to Zara's diplomatic vessel. Jack pulled Zara into the shelter, and they huddled together in the dark, cramped space. Zara could feel the human's rapid heartbeat and smell the fear-induced sweat on his skin. Yet, despite his terror, he positioned himself protectively in front of her, his crude spear held ready. The sound of the ships was deafening now. Zara could hear the whine of anti-gravity engines as they hovered over the beach where her ship had crashed. There was a series of loud explosions, and she knew with a sinking feeling that the hostiles were destroying the evidence of her landing. For hours, they remained hidden as the ships methodically searched the island. Zara marveled at Jack's ingenuity. His shelter, while simple, was remarkably effective at masking their heat signatures and scent. As night fell, the ships finally departed, leaving behind an eerie silence. When they finally emerged from hiding, Zara saw the destruction left in the wake of the search. Large swathes of the jungle had been burned or flattened. Her ship was nothing more than a smoking crater on the beach. Jack placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, and when she turned to look at him, she saw not pity in his eyes, but a fierce determination. He pointed to himself, then to her, and made a gesture that unmistakably meant together. In that moment, Zara realized that her mission had irrevocably changed. She was no longer just an observer of humanity. She had become an active participant in their story. And this human, this remarkable, resourceful being, was now her ally in a conflict that threatened not just her, but potentially his entire world. As they stood together on the beach, watching the last traces of the hostile ships disappear into the night sky, Zara knew that the real challenge was just beginning. She had to find a way to contact her people, warn them of this new threat, and do it all while protecting Jack and the secret of humanity's first contact with alien life. The diplomat in her recoiled at the monumental breach of protocol. The survivor in her was simply grateful for Jack's help, and a small, unexpected part of her was exhilarated by the prospect of working alongside this fascinating example of humanity. Whatever came next, Zara knew one thing for certain: her view of humanity and her role in the galaxy would never be the same again. Hidden sanctuary. The dawn broke over the island, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Zara stood at the edge of the clearing, her multifaceted eyes taking in the devastation left by the hostile ships. Beside her, Jack was busy gathering what remained of his carefully cultivated garden, his face set in a grim expression. Despite the language barrier, they had managed to communicate through gestures and drawings in the dirt. Zara had conveyed that the ships might return, and they needed to find a more secure hiding place. Jack had nodded in understanding, pointing towards the island's interior, where a series of cliffs rose above the tree line. As they prepared to leave, Zara found herself marveling at the humans' adaptability. In just a few short hours, Jack had packed up years of survival work, ready to start anew for the sake of their safety. It was a trait she had observed in humanity's history, but never expected to witness firsthand. They set off into the dense jungle, Jack leading the way with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the terrain. Zara followed, her alien physiology struggling with the humid climate and uneven ground. Several times she stumbled over roots or slipped on moss-covered rocks, only to find Jack's strong hand steadying her. As they trekked, Zara's mind wandered to the problem at hand. Her ship's communication array was destroyed, leaving her with no way to contact the Confederation. The emergency beacon in her survival pack was designed for short-range planetary communication, not interstellar distances. She needed to find a way to boost its signal, and for that, she would need technology. After hours of arduous hiking, they reached the base of the cliffs. Jack gestured excitedly to a narrow opening, nearly hidden by vines and foliage. As they squeezed through, Zara gasped in awe. The small entrance opened into a vast cavern, illuminated by narrow shafts of sunlight from above. A small freshwater spring trickled down one wall, forming a clear pool at the base. Jack grinned at her reaction, clearly proud of his discovery. He immediately set about creating a living space, arranging their meager belongings, and starting a small fire near the cave's entrance. The smoke dissipated through the shafts above, leaving no visible trace from the outside. As Jack worked, Zara unpacked her survival gear, laying out the components of her emergency beacon. She knew she had to try to modify it, but the task seemed insurmountable with the primitive tools at her disposal. Sensing her frustration, Jack approached, curiosity evident in his green eyes. He pointed to the beacon, then to himself, mimicking the act of helping. Zara hesitated. The prime directive of non-interference weighed heavily on her mind, but as she looked at Jack's earnest face, she realized that ship had already sailed the moment she accepted his help. With a nod, she began to explain the beacon's function through crude drawings in the dirt. To her surprise, Jack caught on quickly, his eyes lighting up with understanding. He held up a finger in a wait gesture and dashed to his pack, rummaging through it excitedly. When he returned, he held out a small device to Zara. She recognized it immediately. A portable radio, battered and worn, but potentially salvageable. Jack mimed speaking into it, then shrugged, indicating it no longer worked. Zara's heart raced with newfound hope. The radio's components, while primitive, could potentially be used to boost her beacon's signal. She nodded enthusiastically, and together they bent over the devices, beginning the painstaking process of integration. Days turned into weeks as they worked on the communication array. Jack proved to be an invaluable assistant, his natural ingenuity complementing Zora's advanced knowledge. He fashioned tools out of wood and stone with remarkable precision, allowing them to manipulate the delicate components of both the beacon and the radio. During their downtime, they developed a rudimentary form of communication. Zora began to pick up basic English words, while Jack learned to interpret her gestures and expressions. They spent evenings by the fire, with Jack pointing out objects and slowly enunciating their names, his patience seemingly endless. As they worked and lived side by side, Zora found her preconceptions about humanity constantly challenged. Jack's resourcefulness, his adaptability, and his unwavering spirit in the face of adversity were unlike anything she had encountered in her diplomatic career. Here was a being who had survived alone on this island for years, and yet still found the capacity to trust and help a stranger, an alien, no less. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from the mouth of their cave, Jack surprised Zora by initiating a conversation about their respective worlds. Through a combination of broken English, gestures, and drawings, he managed to ask about her home. Zora hesitated, acutely aware of the potential consequences of sharing such information. But looking at Jack's open, curious face, she made a decision. Using the stars as a visual aid, she began to explain the vastness of the galaxy, pointing out the general direction of her homeworld. Jack listened with rapt attention, his eyes wide with wonder. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he pointed to himself, then to the stars, and raised his eyebrows in a clear question. The implication was clear. He was asking if he could see her world someday. Zora felt a pang in her heart. The likelihood of that happening, given Confederation laws, was virtually non-existent, but she couldn't bring herself to extinguish the hope in Jack's eyes. Instead, she simply smiled and nodded, patting his hand gently. As the weeks wore on, their progress on the communication array was slow but steady. Zora estimated they were about halfway to creating a device capable of sending a signal to her people. However, their work was not without setbacks. One day, as they were foraging for food, they heard the now familiar sound of spacecraft entering the atmosphere. They rushed back to their cave, hearts pounding, and watched from their hidden vantage point as 3 ships methodically swept the island. The search lasted for hours, with the ships using advanced scanning technology to comb every inch of the terrain. Zora and Jack huddled in the deepest part of the cave, hardly daring to breathe. It was only due to the unique mineral composition of the cliff that they remained undetected. When the ships finally departed, the reality of their situation hit home hard. They weren't just hiding to protect the secret of first contact anymore. They were evading a very real, very dangerous threat. The hostile force, whoever they were determined to find Zora, and they weren't giving up. That night, as they sat in somber silence by their small fire, Jack did something unexpected. He reached out and took Zora's hand in his, squeezing it gently. The gesture transcended their linguistic and cultural barriers, conveying comfort and solidarity. Zora felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the fire. In that moment, she realized that despite their vast differences, despite the potential consequences, she had come to trust this human completely. More than that, she had come to care for him. As she looked at Jack's profile, illuminated by the flickering firelight, Zora made a silent vow. She would find a way to contact her people, not just for her own sake, but for Jack's, for humanity's. Whatever threat these hostiles pose, it was clear that Earth was now in their sights, and Zora was determined to protect this remarkable world and its even more remarkable inhabitants. With renewed determination, they threw themselves into their work on the communication array. Jack began taking risks, venturing further from their hideout to scavenge materials from the wreckage left by the hostile ships. Each time he returned, Zora felt a mixture of relief and guilt. Relief at his safety, and guilt at the danger she was putting him in. But Jack never complained. If anything, He seemed energized by their shared purpose. His creativity in repurposing the alien technology constantly amazed Zara. Where she saw insurmountable technological gaps, he saw opportunities for innovative solutions. As they neared completion of their project, Zara couldn't help but reflect on the irony of her situation. She had come to Earth to observe humanity from afar, to gauge their readiness for galactic citizenship. Instead, she found herself in a life-or-death partnership with one of them, witnessing firsthand the very qualities that made humans unique in the galaxy. Whatever came next, whether they succeeded in contacting the Confederation or not, Zara knew that her report on humanity would be forever changed by her experiences with Jack. And as she watched him work, his face set in concentration as he delicately soldered a connection on their makeshift device, she felt a surge of something she had never expected to feel towards a primitive species: admiration, respect, and something that felt dangerously close to love. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, Zara realized, would play a far greater role in that change than anyone in the Confederation had ever anticipated. All that remained was to send the message, and hope that someone would hear it in time. Alien invasion begins. The makeshift communications array crackled to life, emitting a series of high-pitched beeps and whistles. Zara's eyes widened in excitement as she fine-tuned the frequency, her slender fingers dancing across the jury-rigged controls. Beside her, Jack watched with rapt attention, his brow furrowed in concentration despite not understanding the alien technology. "It's working," Zara breathed, forgetting for a moment that Jack couldn't understand her native language. She turned to him, her face alight with hope, and gave him a thumbs up, a human gesture she had learned from him. Jack's face split into a wide grin, and he returned the gesture enthusiastically. They had done it. After weeks of painstaking work, cannibalizing parts from Zara's emergency beacon and Jack's old radio, they had created a device capable of sending a signal across interstellar distances. Zara began transmitting her distress call, a coded message that would alert the Confederation to her situation without revealing too much to potential hostile interceptors. As the message beamed out into space, Zara allowed herself a moment of relief. Help was on the way. Soon, she would be rescued, and Earth would be protected from the mysterious threat that loomed over it. But as the initial elation faded, a new worry gnawed at her. What would happen to Jack? Confederation protocols were clear. All traces of her presence on Earth would need to be erased, including any memories of her. The thought of Jack forgetting her, of losing this remarkable connection they had forged, sent a pang through her heart. Her musings were interrupted by a sudden change in the communications array's output. The steady beep of the outgoing transmission was overtaken by a cacophony of signals. Zara frowned, adjusting the controls to isolate and decode the new inputs. As the messages became clear, Zara felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. These weren't responses from the Confederation. These were tactical communications, encoded in a military cipher she recognized all too well. The hostile forces weren't just searching for her. They were coordinating a full-scale invasion of Earth. Zara turned to Jack, her expression grave. How could she explain the dire situation to him with their limited means of communication? But as she met his eyes, she saw understanding there. Jack might not have known the details, but he sensed the gravity of the moment. Using a combination of gestures, drawings, and the few shared words they had developed, Zara conveyed the essence of the threat. Earth was in danger. Many ships were coming. They needed to warn others. Jack's reaction surprised her. Instead of fear or panic, his jaw set with determination. He pointed to himself, then to the cave entrance, and mind running. He wanted to go warn his people. Zara hesitated. Every instinct and every regulation told her to minimize contact, to wait for the Confederation to handle the situation. But looking at Jack's resolute face, she realized that humanity deserved the chance to fight for itself. And if anyone could rally Earth's defenses, it was someone like Jack, resourceful, brave, and uniquely adapted to crisis. With a nod, Zara agreed to Jack's plan. They quickly gathered their essential supplies, including the portable version of their communication array that they had been developing as a backup. As they prepared to leave their sanctuary, Zara felt a mixture of trepidation and excitement. For the first time since crash landing on this planet, she would see more of Earth and its inhabitants. Their journey from the isolated island to civilization was a harrowing one. They used a raft jack constructed from salvaged materials, navigating treacherous ocean currents. Zara marveled at Jack's skill, the way he read the waves and winds with an intuition born of years of survival. After days at sea, they finally spotted a coastline dotted with buildings, a small coastal town that Jack identified as part of a place called New Zealand. As they approached, Zara activated the personal cloaking device from her survival kit. It wasn't powerful enough to keep her hidden indefinitely, but it would allow her to move through the human settlement undetected for a short time. The town was a sensory overload for Zara. The sights, sounds, and smells of human civilization were overwhelming after months of isolation. She watched in amazement as Jack confidently approached a group of locals, explaining his situation as a castaway. His appearance, wild-haired and weather-beaten, lent credence to his story. Within hours, Jack had managed to convince the local authorities of the impending threat. Zara, still cloaked, marveled at his charisma and persuasiveness. She fed him information through a crude earpiece they had fashioned, allowing him to provide specific details about the invasion force that gave weight to his warnings. As news of the potential alien invasion spread, the small town erupted into a flurry of activity. Zara watched as humans from all walks of life came together, organizing defenses, establishing communication networks, and preparing for the unknown. Their ability to adapt and unite in the face of a crisis was remarkable. But their efforts, impressive as they were, wouldn't be enough against the advanced technology of the invading force. Zara knew she had to do more. Using the portable array, she continued to broadcast distress signals to the Confederation, hoping against hope that help would arrive in time. As day turned to night, the first signs of the invasion became visible. Strange lights appeared in the sky, moving in formations that no Earth aircraft could achieve. The town's makeshift early warning system, cobbled together from repurposed weather radar and satellite dishes, began blaring alarms. In the chaos that ensued, Zara made a decision that would change everything. She deactivated her cloaking device, revealing herself to the assembled human leaders. The shock and awe on their faces were palpable, but there was no time for lengthy explanations. "I am Ambassador Zara of the Galactic Confederation," she announced, her translator device converting her words to English. "Your world is under attack by a rogue faction known as the Void Reavers. I am here to help." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, questions, exclamations of disbelief, and cries of fear. But above it all, Jack's voice rang out, firm and confident. "Listen to her," he commanded, and to Zara's amazement, the humans fell silent. "Zara saved my life. She's been working to protect Earth since she crashed here. We need her knowledge to survive this." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Zara found herself at the center of Earth's improvised defense strategy, providing crucial information about the invaders' technology and tactics. She watched in awe as human scientists and engineers took her advanced concepts and rapidly developed countermeasures using their existing technology in ways she had never imagined possible. As the first wave of the invasion force entered Earth's atmosphere, humanity stood ready. It wasn't a polished, high-tech defense that met the Void Reavers, but a patchwork of ingenious solutions. Repurposed satellite dishes became electromagnetic pulse generators. Weather control systems were adapted to create atmospheric disturbances that played havoc with the invaders' sensors. And at the heart of it all was the unlikely pair, an alien diplomat and a human castaway, coordinating a global resistance from a small town in New Zealand. As battles raged in skies across the planet, Zara couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey that had led to this moment. She had come to Earth to observe humanity from afar, to assess their readiness for galactic citizenship. Instead, she found herself fighting alongside them, witnessing firsthand their indomitable spirit and incredible potential. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and the battle was far from over. But as Zora looked at Jack, saw the determination in his eyes and the set of his jaw, she felt a surge of hope. Humanity might be technologically outmatched, but they possessed qualities that no advanced weaponry could replicate: adaptability, creativity, and an unbreakable will to survive. As the night sky lit up with the flashes of orbital combat, Zara knew that win or lose, the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had entered the cosmic stage, not with a polite introduction, but with a defiant roar that would echo across the stars. The invasion had begun, but so too had humanity's rise as a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. And Zara, once a mere observer, now found herself at the very heart of this historic moment, her fate inextricably linked with that of the remarkable species she had come to admire and protect. Unlikely heroes. The war room hummed with frenetic energy as military leaders, scientists, and civilian volunteers worked tirelessly to coordinate Earth's defense. At the center of it all stood Zara and Jack, an unlikely pair that had become the linchpin of humanity's resistance against the Void Reavers. Zara's multifaceted eyes scanned the array of screens displaying battle data from across the globe. The situation was grim. Despite humanity's ingenuity and determination, the technological gap between Earth's defenses and the Void Reavers' weaponry was stark. Major cities worldwide were under siege, and the death toll was mounting. "We need a game changer," Jack muttered, running a hand through his unkempt hair. He turned to Zara, his green eyes blazing with a mixture of desperation and hope. "There must be something in your Confederation technology that we can use." Zara hesitated. She had already pushed the boundaries of non-interference protocols far beyond what was permissible, but as she looked around at the faces of the humans working tirelessly to save their world, she knew she couldn't hold back now. "There might be something," she said slowly, her translator device converting her words to English. "But it's risky, and it goes against everything my people believe in regarding non-interference." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar and comforting over their weeks together. "Zara, I think we're well past worrying about interference. This is survival." With a nod, Zara began to explain. "My ship's AI core. If we can salvage it from the wreckage, we might be able to integrate it with your global defense networks. It could provide the computational power and tactical analysis we need to level the playing field." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. General Laura Chen, the highest-ranking military officer present, stepped forward. "That wreckage is in the middle of a hot zone. The Void Reavers have set up a base of operations near your crash site. Getting to it would be a suicide mission." "Then we'll need a team of volunteers," Jack said, his voice firm. "I'll lead it." Zara felt a surge of both pride and fear at Jack's words. This was the humanity she had come to admire: brave, selfless, and undaunted in the face of overwhelming odds. But the thought of Jack risking his life sent a chill through her. Over the next few hours, a plan took shape. A small team would infiltrate the island where Zara's ship had crashed. While the main force of Earth's military provided a distraction, the team would locate and extract the AI core. Zara would accompany them, her knowledge of the ship crucial to the mission's success. As preparations were made, Zora pulled Jack aside. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her concern evident even through the electronic tones of her translator. Jack's face softened. "No," he admitted, "but I'm sure about you, about us, about what we're fighting for. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith." His words stirred something in Zora, a feeling she had been grappling with since their time together on the island. In that moment, protocol and caution fell away. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to Jack's, an intimate gesture among her people. To her surprise and joy, Jack seemed to understand, wrapping his arms around her in a gentle embrace. The moment was interrupted by the call to assemble. As they joined the rest of the team, a mix of special forces operatives and tech experts. Zara felt a new resolve. This wasn't just about saving Earth anymore. It was about fighting for a future where beings from different worlds could stand together as equals. The mission began under the cover of darkness, as Earth's remaining air forces engaged the Void Reavers in a massive dogfight over the Pacific. Zara and her team approached the island in a stealth submersible. The night sky above them lit up with explosions, a deadly light show that reflected off the choppy waves. As they neared the shore, Zara activated her personal cloaking device, extending its field to cover the entire team. It wouldn't fool the Void Reavers' most advanced sensors, but it would give them a fighting chance to slip past the perimeter defenses. The island, once a lush paradise, was now a scared battleground. The jungle had been cleared to make way for the Void Reavers' base, a sprawling complex of alien architecture that pulsed with an ominous energy. In the distance, Zara could see the crater where her ship had crashed, now surrounded by heavy fortifications. "This way," Zara whispered, leading the team through a gap in the enemy patrols. Her knowledge of Void Reaver tactics, combined with Jack's survival skills and the Special Forces training, made them a formidable infiltration unit. As they approached the crash site, they encountered their first major obstacle, an energy barrier surrounding the crater. Zara's heart sank. Breaking through would alert the entire base to their presence. But once again, human ingenuity surprised her. One of the tech experts, a young woman named Aisha, pulled out a device she had cobbled together from Earth tech and salvaged alien components. "It's a localized EMP," she explained. "Should create a momentary gap in the barrier, but we'll only have seconds to get through." Jack nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Then we'll make those seconds count." The plan worked, but barely. As they slipped through the flickering barrier, alarms began to blare across the base. They had minutes at most before they would be overwhelmed. Zara led them to what remained of her ship's central chamber. The AI core, a crystalline structure the size of a human fist, pulsed with a faint blue light amidst the twisted metal. As Zara carefully extracted it, she felt a pang of sadness. This was the heart of her ship, her home for so many years, and now it would be sacrificed to save a world not her own. "We've got incoming," one of the soldiers shouted. The sounds of energy weapons charging filled the air. What happened next was a blur of chaos and heroism. The team fought their way back through the Void Reaver forces, each member pushing themselves beyond their limits. Zara found herself fighting alongside humans, her advanced knowledge of the enemy's weaknesses complementing their combat skills. They were nearly to the extraction point when disaster struck. A Void Reaver energy blast caught Jack in the side, sending him sprawling. Without hesitation, Zara turned back, firing her own weapon with one hand while dragging Jack to safety with the other. As they reached the submersible, Zara made a split-second decision. She pressed the AI core into Aisha's hands. "Get this to the command center. It's Earth's only hope." Before anyone could protest, she activated her personal shield, expanding it to cover Jack. "Go," she shouted. "We'll hold them off." As the submersible disappeared beneath the waves, Zara turned to face the oncoming Void Reavers, Jack leaning heavily against her but still standing, still fighting. In that moment, as they prepared to make their last stand, Zara felt no regret. She had found something on this planet worth fighting for, worth dying for. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Just as they were about to be overwhelmed, the sky lit up with a new kind of energy signature, one that Zara recognized with a surge of hope. The Confederation had finally arrived. As Void Reaver ships began to fall from the sky, disabled by the advanced weaponry of the Confederation fleet, Zara allowed herself to believe that they might survive this after all. She looked at Jack, saw the wonder and hope in his eyes as he beheld the awesome sight of humanity's first official contact with a galactic power, and felt her heart swell with emotion. Whatever came next, the galaxy had been forever changed. Humanity had proven itself a force to be reckoned with, and Zara knew that her report to the Confederation would reflect that. This remarkable species, with their boundless creativity and indomitable spirit, deserved a place among the stars. As Confederation shuttles descended to the island, Zara took Jack's hand in hers. Together, they had bridged the gap between two worlds. Now it was time to build a future where those worlds could coexist, learn from each other, and face the challenges of the cosmos side by side. The battle was ending, but the true adventure, the integration of humanity into the galactic community, was just beginning. And Zara, once a mere observer, now found herself at the heart of this historic moment, hand in hand with the human who had changed everything. Turning the tide. The Confederation flagship, Stellar Harmony, hung in Earth's orbit, its sleek, organic design a stark contrast to the angular Void Reaver ships that now drifted powerless in space. On the bridge, Zara stood beside Jack, both still bearing the scars and grime of their recent battle. Before them, a holographic display showed the ongoing cleanup operations across the planet. "Your world is safe," Zara said softly, her translator conveying the warmth in her voice. "The Void Reavers have been neutralized." Jack nodded, his eyes fixed on the blue marble of Earth below. "We couldn't have done it without you," he replied, his hand finding hers and squeezing gently. Their moment of quiet reflection was interrupted by the arrival of High Counselor Thera, the leader of the Confederation Task Force. The tall, ethereal being regarded the pair with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Ambassador Zara," Thera's melodious voice filled the bridge. "Your actions have placed us in an unprecedented situation. The level of interference—" "With all due respect, High Counselor," Zara interrupted, straightening her posture, "I believe our non-interference policies need to be reevaluated. Humanity has proven itself more than capable of joining the galactic community." Thera's luminescent eyes widened slightly, then turned to Jack. "And what do you think, human? Is your species ready for the challenges and responsibilities that come with galactic citizenship?" Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He was no diplomat, no world leader, just a man who had found himself at the center of an interstellar conflict. But as he looked around at the advanced technology of the Confederation ship, he felt not intimidation, but inspiration. "We may not have your level of technology," Jack began, his voice steady, "but humanity has something just as valuable. We have an unbreakable spirit, a creativity that thrives under pressure, and a capacity for growth that I think would surprise you." He gestured to the display showing Earth. "Look at what we accomplished against the Void Reavers with just a fraction of your knowledge. Imagine what we could do as part of the Confederation, not just for ourselves, but for the galaxy." Thera was silent for a long moment, their expression unreadable. Finally, they spoke. "Your words carry wisdom, human. Perhaps it is time for the Confederation to reconsider its stance on emerging species." They turned to Zara. "Ambassador, I'm assigning you as our official liaison to Earth. Your unique perspective will be invaluable as we navigate this new relationship." Zara felt a surge of emotion, pride, excitement, and a touch of apprehension. "Thank you, High Counselor. I won't let you down." As Thera departed, Zara and Jack were left alone once more. The magnitude of what had just transpired began to sink in. "So," Jack said with a hint of his old humor, "does this mean I get to see your homeworld after all?" Zara laughed, a sound that still surprised Jack with its musical quality. "I believe that can be arranged. But first, we have work to do here." Over the next few weeks, Earth underwent a transformation unlike anything in its history. The process of integrating human society with the wider galactic community began in earnest. Zara found herself at the center of it all, bridging the gap between human governments and Confederation diplomats. To her constant amazement, humanity continued to surpass expectations. Earth's scientists eagerly collaborated with their alien counterparts, their unique perspectives leading to breakthroughs that benefited both sides. Human artists and philosophers engaged in cultural exchanges that enriched the galactic discourse. Even in the realm of technology, Earth's engineers often found innovative applications for Confederation tech that had never been considered before. Jack, for his part, became an unofficial ambassador in his own right. His straightforward manner and first-hand experience with both human and alien perspectives made him an invaluable asset in smoothing over cultural misunderstandings. He took to the role with surprising aptitude, his natural charisma and quick wit endearing him to humans and aliens alike. 1 year after the Void Reaver invasion, Earth was ready to take its place as a probationary member of the Galactic Confederation. The ceremony, broadcast across the planet and to thousands of worlds beyond, was a spectacle of unity and hope. As Zara watched the Earth's representatives sign the accession treaty, she felt a swell of pride unlike anything she had experienced in her diplomatic career. This was more than a political victory. It was the beginning of a new era for the galaxy. After the ceremony, Zara found Jack standing alone on a balcony overlooking the sprawling city below, now dotted with signs of alien architecture seamlessly blending with human designs. "Credit for your thoughts," she asked, using the human phrase she had learned from him. Jack turned to her, a smile playing on his lips. "Just thinking about that day on the island, when I first saw you step out of your crashed ship. If someone had told me then that I'd be standing here a year later, watching Earth join a galactic alliance." He shook his head in wonder. Zara stepped closer, taking his hand in hers. The gesture, once alien to her, now felt as natural as breathing. "You've come a long way from that castaway," she said softly. "We both have," Jack replied, his green eyes meeting her multifaceted ones. "So what's next for us, Ambassador?" "More diplomatic missions, exploring the far reaches of the galaxy." Zara's expression turned serious. "Actually, I've been thinking. The Void Reavers may have been defeated, but they were just one threat among many in the galaxy. Earth's unique approach to problem-solving, combined with Confederation technology, could be the key to addressing some of the greatest challenges facing the galactic community." Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What did you have in mind?" "I'm proposing a new initiative," Zara explained, her excitement evident in her voice. "A joint task force of humans and Confederation members, dedicated to tackling the most pressing issues in the galaxy. From ecological disasters on far-flung worlds to diplomatic crises between ancient species, we'll be there to help." "Sounds like quite the adventure," Jack said, a familiar glint of determination in his eyes. "When do we start?" Zara felt a rush of affection for this remarkable human who had changed her life in so many ways. "How does tomorrow sound?" she asked. Jack's response was to pull her close, pressing his forehead to hers in the gesture she had taught him, now laden with shared meaning. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he whispered. As they stood there, an alien and a human united by shared experiences and a common purpose, the cityscape before them seemed to symbolize the future they were building. It was a future of challenges, certainly, but also one of unlimited potential. A future where the best of humanity and the wonders of the galaxy combined to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The story of Earth's entry into the galactic stage was just beginning, but it was already shaping up to be one for the ages. And at the heart of it all was an unlikely pair, a once-stranded alien diplomat and a resourceful human castaway, whose bond had not only saved a world, but changed the course of galactic history. As the twin suns of Earth's new era set on the horizon, Zara and Jack looked to the stars, ready for whatever adventures awaited them in the vast, beautiful, ever-surprising cosmos.